I was very happy to see Panther Lake good reviews. This one, this one, this one. And there are many more which I would assume you will see. And there is a part. It is very good, they integrate graphics. And this is what I think it's good and bad in the same time. And why it is that if you take into account the second part is that the laptop is not only graphics, things like price. I can't say it will be a great deal, especially like people who look Panther Lake and they'll say, let me buy a Panther Lake laptop and you'll screw yourself. I'll give just one example. So I just looked for new egg. Let me be very clear, I'm not living in the US, so maybe I could say nonsense, but it doesn't look to me like nonsense. So when you will look for Panther Lake, you'll find this laptop, which on the first glance it looks it worse than this laptop because you have less storage, you have a bit bigger screen and better screen on the MSI Prestige, and the same memory and maybe a stylus, which for some people matters a lot. But that being said, the processors are not the same. It's 355, which is in fact is like a lunar lake from the last generation with lower integrated graphics and the like. So in fact, AMD will have better graphics. So you buying a graphics laptop, you'll buy a worse graphics laptop. And let me be very clear, this is the laptop I'm having, which is basically kind of the same like MSI, but you have a 5070, kind of the same screen, maybe not as OLED or so light to transport. And the processor will be minus 255H, but it will be basically in the same ballpark with the top of the line Panther Lake. And why I'm saying is the same, if not better, is that, for example, I have put just before the RAM prices grew 96 gigs of memory because it's upgradable. But let's say why I think it is a bad. So if you look for 1500, you could buy this one or that one. And what you'll see, there are no benchmarks yet for this one, but it should be like a lunar lake. But what's the most interesting part is that this one, let's find it. It's a Panther Lake, but it's with 8 cores, basically. This is the critical measure. The top of the line, which is in the benchmarks, which will look confusing, which will cost more, it will be with 16 cores. And what I have is something with 16 cores. The configuration is a bit different, but this is beside the point. The frequencies also are different. Again, this is beside the point, but at the end it matters how well it runs. And the tables which are the most interesting are the wattage. Basically, if you give a lot of power in high performance mode, would run with a lot of wattage more, let's say 40-50%, but you see it's not translated in the very high performance region. You have a numbers of tops, but in fact with the NVIDIA GPU, we get into hundreds. So it's more than whatever with the iGPU. And the rest of benchmarks are not so impressive. So for example, 255H has around 42 points in a composite score versus 44 points. I rounded up here and here rounded down. So 42 versus 44 points is around 3% speed up in any direction. I think people will not care. No offense. And this one behaves more or less like the AMD 370, which is 1 year old and it was that cheaper laptop. Okay, so if you have this kind of numbers in the processor, what, how much would it feel? And quite often it matters the single core, and the single core is nothing to see. Maybe in multi-core it's a bit more efficient, because it uses a bit more cores. So if you go in Task Manager, you will see something in performance that here the last two cores are not used. It is quite known this behavior on Arrow Lake, but otherwise the numbers are in the same ballpark. But the laptops will cost much, much more, and for no obvious reason, at least from where I'm standing. And even if, again, you get 15% faster decompression, or even more, it's not as much as it looks, especially as this laptops will be power limited. So I don't know, it feels to me squeezed. But let's go to efficiency because the last thing which these laptops are promoted, they are much more efficient. But I think it's mattering not that much where it is. So let's say you do rendering. So here's in a bench, you'll get from 32 points per watt to 36 points per watt, 12% more in consumption. And here it looks is a median power. Like when you idle with your screen, you use 9.3 watts versus 7 watts, 6.8. Again, it is something, but nothing to care about. Or 7, 8 watts with an external monitor versus 6 watts with an external monitor. Would it matter? I don't know. And the same is when you use an external monitor or a light to do rendering, it is 88 watts. Here it consumes even less, it consumes even more than on average the 255H. So this is the issue. Like maybe you'll get a bit more power, like 15%, but it's like no obvious reason why should you buy it. And to me, the most depressive part is that the naming is really confusing. I would assume 355 to have the same ballpark performance with 255, but no, because this is not an age, and with a non-age, you don't even know what you're picking. It would be very hard to me to explain to a person what is 388 age versus a 368 age without looking into every spec. So I think it will be even confusing for buyers. But to be very fair, I think Intel at the end of the year, they announced they will launch a new revolutionary generations of processors. And for that one, I really have high hopes because I really want Intel back. But anyway, this hype, I don't understand it. Maybe the laptops Intel comes with are nice, but the processor it's quite lame in my view, especially if you put the price and you can get a 5060 or 5070 integrated. And here it's not because I'm a NVIDIA fan, it's just a different class of performance. So thank you for listening and see you next time.